today. How do you allow yourself to stay steady and strong and resolute on the mission of representing Jesus well, and not allow voices or distractions or opinions, whether they're directly one-on-one from somebody or just ones that you are assuming outside
All right. Hey everyone, welcome to the Represent Jesus Well podcast. My name is Sam and I'm one of the pastors here at RCC. And Represent Jesus Well, this podcast, we're all about helping you represent Jesus well right where you're at. That's what this is all about. And I'm here today with Meg, the Communication and Connection Director here at RCC, also my wife Meg. So how's it
thank
going?
You for actually having me back.
Yeah.
I didn't scare you too much last episode. This episode is all about continuing or maybe even capping off that Representing Jesus Well topic that we had last episode. If you didn't listen to that episode, make sure you check that out. During that episode, I turned the tables on you and really asked you all about the genesis of Representing Jesus Well. I always want to say RJW, but the genesis of that idea, how you applied it to your own life, what that looked like, and then what propelled you to want to really adopt that mission for our whole church family and our community. So that was really fun to do. But as I was processing that topic, I kept on thinking about this is easier said than done, isn't it? So what are maybe some of the threats to that happening or challenges that sometimes come our way when we are really trying to represent Jesus well in our lives? And one of the things that popped into my brain, and one of the conversations that you and I have often, and one of the topics that I think I really want to focus on today, is the opinions of others, or the crazy amount of distractions and voices that we encounter even just on a daily basis, and how that affects how we represent Jesus well. So I don't know if you want, are you okay? We'll see what transpires with this, y'all.
You brought this topic up to me and you're like, this is gold. This is so good.
Okay. So there are just a sheer amount of, like I said, of distractions that come our way every day, and a ton. Everybody has their own opinion, right? So first, just want to start out. When have you maybe listened to the voices of other people or other people's opinions a little too much, or maybe did something that really wasn't in line with who you are, purely just because other people influenced you?
Yeah. So, okay. I want to answer that question. First, I gotta say a couple of things. First, after we did last round of podcasts, we had so much feedback. I had so many people come and talk and say, that was so great. And that is kudos to you. You crushed it. So I'm really glad that we get to keep doing this, because it's really, really fun. And you asked the best questions. So really good job. Secondly, the sheer amount of things, can we just, before I want to answer that question, but first, can we just think about the different things that are contributing to it? I'm realizing, I think sometimes we don't even realize how many things are contributing to how we make decisions.
Yes.
And like social media and that sort of thing. There's just a crazy amount of things. There's an expert on every other social media account.
Exactly.
It's insane.
Yes. Well, and do you want advice in any area? Google. Just look to Google it, and you can get advice right away about what to do. And so there's voices, distractions, whether we look for them or we don't look for them. Yes, they come our way. And also opinions of people that, do we let those opinions drive how we make choices or how we live, or do we not? So
yeah, it's constant. And that whole thing makes me think of, for me, the one place I feel like I make the worst decisions is shopping. Clothes shopping. I feel like I go and I do clothes shopping, and this may be an area where I should rely on another person's opinion, and it shouldn't be mine or anybody else's other than yours. We go shopping, and I feel like I pick something out, like, this looks great on me, and it's like, no, it does not look good on me.
I'm not that opinion.
No, you're good at it.
Okay.
I'm the one that I take it home and I try to wear it out and oops, and then it sits in my closet for the next month.
So other people have influenced you in that area.
Or I'll see something that looks really good on somebody else, and then I'll try to rock it, and then I can't. Yeah. And I feel very sad about that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
How about you?
Oh, okay. Well, if you know me, I go deep quick.
Yeah.
So like the first thing that popped to mind, I was like, is this too personal? But
exciting.
Yeah, I know. I think honestly, becoming a mom was one of the most, like, I felt so unqualified for that. And that caused me to look around me of like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And look to others. And I allowed maybe sometimes throughout becoming a mom and making choices about our kids, I allowed other people's opinions or preferences, or just external voices and pressures that were there to influence how I parented my kids. And that led to me making choices that maybe weren't in line with how God wired me as a mom. And I had to then take some time to figure out, what voices am I listening to? How am I making choices? Where are my priorities? And I had to kind of spend some time unraveling that. And I still do. I think it's a daily, a weekly kind of choice and a posture that I have to have, where I'm like, okay, whose voice am I listening to above the noise? Is it God's? Is it, really keeping that in line. And so that's one.
You're right. That was deep, but it was really,
Sorry.
really good. That's awesome.
I went there.
But it's so true, because I know we've had that conversation so many times, just about what it looks like to parent well.
Yeah.
And I think it's got to be like top 5 of areas that people are telling you how you should do it.
Yeah.
And like, if you ask an opinion, you'll get 13.
Well, that's an area, I think, how to be a really great leader in the workplace. That's another area where you will get a myriad of pressures and everybody telling you how to lead well, whether it's good advice or not good advice. I think in school, like how to have friends.
Yeah.
You get pressured in a variety of ways with that. I think any season of life, it's just a constant fight to stay above the noise and grow in our strength of discernment to be able to decipher what voices to listen to and what voices not to listen to. And I guess the whole reason why I kind of wanted to delve into this topic a little bit and unravel it a little bit is not because we're experts
Nope.
at all, but because we do wrestle with this quite a bit. And I think you and I have both been open a lot about being people pleasers and about wanting to be good enough and about that motivation, and also with wanting to live out our mission of representing Jesus well, and claiming that as like our focus. There's going to be challenges that come our way. It's not going to be easy. It's never promised to us that it's going to be easy. And so we're going to have resistance with that. And part of that resistance is sometimes daily having to fight against the distractions from living out that mission. And I think sometimes those distractions can just purely come in noise. So you're not really valuing your priorities as well as maybe you should be valuing them. But also it can come in honoring other people's opinions and their expectations above what God's really calling you to do. So thank you for sharing your outfit faux pas, which maybe that's why you lean towards the black shirt.
Yep, black t-shirt every time.
But so I kind of delved in a little bit into the people pleasing aspect of this, and how has people pleasing maybe, like, can you speak to that a little bit? As far as when we want to represent Jesus well, that is going to, whether overtly or not overtly, not be in line with how other people live their life. And how do we process that? How do we make sure that we're listening to God's voice above everybody else's voice? How do we make sure our internal motive isn't to look good or make sure we're well liked or everybody's okay, but that we're actually living out that mission in a very genuine and authentic way?
Yeah, so this is maybe the single most significant area that I wrestle with just on a weekly basis, so professionally and also personally. So when we talk about professionally, I mean, to go into that, every single Sunday I think about what I'm going to say for a sermon. And I have to go through this period of wrestling in my mind. Is this something that I'm saying because I think people will like to hear it? Or am I saying this thing because it's what's true and right and good? And that is often way trickier to get to than you think it is. Because a lot of times, like my first gut reaction is just, it's just to say the thing that's easy and like, oh yeah, like Jesus says to love people, so just go love people. But when you dig, like an example of that would be, oh well, Jesus says to love your enemies. And so it's to dig deeper down into this thing that God says to do and make sure you're hitting that note and not giving this like freedom to just like go and do whatever you want, or freedom to just do what feels nice or sounds nice. Cause it's really easy to make Jesus sound nice. It's really not honest though. Like when you really go and talk to him and learn from him and see what he says and see what he does, there's this sense in which he's always challenging you to do things a more true, more honest, more vulnerable way than what the culture would typically have you do. Like the word love is a really good example of that. Like just love everybody, but like loving everybody doesn't always mean being fluffy and nice and like those things. Sometimes it's telling the truth. And so those are really uncomfortable things to figure out. So every single Sunday I wrestle with, how do I not just say the nice thing? And then also with decision making, like there are 1,000 decisions that get made every week. It feels like just going into a Sunday, going into how we talk about different things with the church, different, what are we going to spend money on to further the mission of the church? Like what goes in there? And there are always incoming voices. So for me,
foosball table for student life.
That was asked today. Yes. That's so great. Though I heard it was free, so we'll see. That's a really good one. Anyways, oh gosh. But like every decision, right? It has those things you have to go through and you have to think, okay, this person wants this. I want to make them happy. Yeah. So I should give it to them, right? But you can't. You have to eventually.
You can't, because that waters down what your mission is, correct?
Yeah.
Like if you try let's just go back to truth. We cannot please everybody. It just is not humanly possible to make every decision, to allow everybody to be happy with every decision, and to please everybody with each decision that's made. And also, if we are more concerned about that, that's elevating other people's opinion above what the actual mission is. And so it really is a threat to living out what that main goal and mission is. I'm going to push you a little bit. So
Please.
You had a lot of really good church examples. Yep. How can people pleasing, though, affect your relationships, your personal life?
Oh, gosh. That's great.
Because, I mean, honestly, from my personal standpoint, letting other people control you, or just distractions in general. So let's say that you're like, I don't care what other people say about me. Great. I know there's people like you out there. I love that for you. But I think that we either have so many distractions that lead us away from our central mission, or we care way too much about what other people think, their opinions. And that, allowing that to control our time, our energy, our focus, can really threaten our relationships. It can threaten our mental health. It can threaten how we live our life and make decisions of how we spend our time, everything. So are there any personal ways that you have processed people pleasing and managing the opinions of others or expectations of others? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So let's just get real nitty gritty. So there are, it is very tempting, especially in this role, to want to take care of people. Yeah. So somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm really struggling with whatever it is, and I'd really like to meet with you and talk about it. And I gotta tell you, that feels good, because it makes you feel really special. I'm the person they go to when they have a problem. And and you can have success with that, right? Like you can counsel people, you can care for people, you can give them direction, and that just feels good.
You get a hit of dopamine, right?
Sure do.
Feels good.
So here's where the balancing act comes in. They can only meet after 5 p.m. They really need this. They're in a really hard spot. They're really struggling. Of course I want to help them. But making that choice now means that I have one less evening with you, with our kids, and I don't know about everybody else is listening, but our schedules get pretty full these days, and so it's one more thing that adds another layer of stress to our family. Yeah. Occasionally I'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's important to, in emergencies, emergencies just happen. Like there's a death or there's somebody in the hospital, and it's really there's always times when it merits it.
Yeah.
But I think I have blurred those lines in the past really significantly.
It's easy to fail every night of the week.
Yes. And it just makes you feel so important and so good. And then you go home, but what you don't realize is now you just made the other people in your life feel like, oh, that thing is more important than the family or whatever it is. And so
because there's nothing left then for your private life,
exactly,
for the people that are closest to you.
So no time and no energy.
Right.
So and it's interesting, right? Like, yeah, there's a lot more here, but I think that's maybe one of the more grittier ones where I think I've experienced being maybe making that decision too many times in the past. Yeah.
Maybe not knowing that there's another way, and
exactly,
being humble and communicating back and forth with whoever, and just being able to offer other opportunities or engage in that conversation instead of right away being like, yeah, I'm the hero, I can help solve this, and we'll figure it out, it'll be fine, and then we have too much going on.
Exactly. So that's the tricky part of it, is it makes you feel so good, so you want like it kind of a self-fulfilling thing, and if you feel good in that way to help somebody, it makes that attractive thing to keep doing. But what you find out is when you please everybody, you all of a sudden fill your schedule to the max, then you have nothing left over for your family. So what we've done kind of as this in-between area is I have a few times throughout the week, like on a Sunday afternoon sometimes, that's a time where I'll maybe do it right after church, or I have these other little corners that I occasionally will offer up as a last resort. That's when that's the stretch, but it's that kind of in-between time.
Because we've gotten clear on what our mission is, and we've established what those boundaries are, right? Yeah. So that's like a direct request from somebody that affects how you live out your mission. What about just in general, like the voices or distractions that maybe come your way? How do you allow yourself to stay steady and strong and resolute on the mission of representing Jesus well, and not allow voices or distractions or opinions, whether they're directly one-on-one from somebody or just ones that you are assuming outside you, to pressure you or sway you side to side? How do you stay resolute on that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so one of the things I try to do pretty often, a practice I have, is I try not to ever make a decision right in front of somebody. Like if it's a high stakes decision, especially, I'm not going to make the decision in the moment. I always take a step back, go to some place that's quiet by myself, reflect, and allow that, because so even having another person in the room affects me. So I can see them, I sense their desires, like I sense what I'm assuming things about what they think I should do. So even just removing myself completely from other people really helps me make a decision that I think honors God the best, because that's my time to like hear from God and like pray and really just listen, like, hey God, what do you want me to do in this? There's a stirring in my gut that says, hey, this is the way to go. And I think through like positives, negatives, all those things, but eventually it's just like, hey God, what do you want me to do? I can't not do that then. It's really helpful to get so convicted of it by yourself, so that when you re-engage the people that you have to have a decision with, you can then come at it with that resolute gut feeling that you've then gone away to find. Yeah. And I think like Jesus does this, right? Like this is what he does. When he's going to make a decision, he goes off into the wilderness. He goes and he prays. He does these things super well. And if Jesus has to do it, we probably should have to do it as well.
So what I hear you saying is a regular practice, a posture of getting quiet, processing, whether that be like daily and just kind of going through what's going to come my way today, or what am I processing still from yesterday, and or in the moment when you do have to make a decision, trying to slow yourself down and realize like, I can't make this decision with everybody staring at me. So I need to be able to take a beat and like process it in a quiet space before coming back, so you're not influenced by other people.
Yes.
So that's like a regular practice.
Yep.
How have you, through doing that though, how have you been able, like, does that help you allow yourself to identify God's voice above other people's voices?
Yeah. So a couple of things with that. Yes, I can't hear God's voice very well when other people's voices are loud, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm close there. But then also I have to think about what my diet is. So not like what I eat, but like what I'm actually intaking. So how
I was gonna say, I mean,
yeah. So I have to think about what are the things that I'm actually listening to and hearing and intaking. So like every morning, am I reading the Bible? Am I doing some more devotional type reading?
Yep.
Are these things coming in? Or for example, am I listening to the news 24/7? Because if you like get in the news loop, man, you can go crazy, and you can hear those things all the time as well. So
yes. So being aware too of what your input is.
Yes.
So part of this too is distractions and how we're influenced by other people. And so just even taking a step back and developing a sensitivity to your inputs.
Well, it's funny is you'll find yourself reading something in the morning, especially if you're in this place of reflecting, taking the time to think like, hey, what's coming today? What decisions are going to have to be made? And then you're reading and all of a sudden the passages seem to come alive a bit more. It's not that every passage is written for you. It's just that in these passages you see themes, you see truths of who God is, and you start to correlate those with the kinds of decisions you ought to make. And sometimes it is like God like jumping off the page and saying, hey, let me hit you aside the head for a second because this is what you need to do.
Can I challenge
Please,
that though? And like, you're only able to do that because you allow yourself to get still, and you've tried to, and you've worked really hard daily to cut out the noise. I know myself, I've been in seasons where I'm like, this is supposed to be fun. Like, come on.
Yeah, for sure.
And sitting there and like really trying to read my Bible and struggling through it too. And so, I want to allow that caveat there to like give hope for, there's times where that happens, and there's times where you just have to be persistent in almost the wilderness and the quiet, and know that you are building a reservoir where you can draw from, and that it's not void.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say like one out of 10 days, I get that moment, maybe, where it's like, oh man, this just totally applies. This is amazing. The other days I just read it. And like there'll be small little nudges here or there, like, oh wow, that's really interesting. I never saw it that way before, that kind of thing. But a lot of the times it's just doing the work and showing up every day, because you know one of those 10 days or one of those 20 days you're gonna need that moment. And then it comes.
And it's often in that quiet where our brain has a time to slow down and make the connections and be convicted either on a decision that we made that wasn't smart, or I know for me, whenever I get quiet, I'm like, oh, bingo. Like I totally know how to deal with that situation now, or at least what my next step is, like, instead of forcing something. So stillness, getting quiet. And then also you said
your diet,
knowing your diet, maybe not bagels every day. I love bagels. Why did I say bagels? Archer, that's a shout out for you, our middle son bagel fanatic. Anyways, okay, knowing our diet. So on that note, knowing what's influencing us, what's making us maybe our preferences, making us choose certain things. Can you speak any encouragement to that? Because I want to, it's not like, oh, can't do anything fun. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Can you speak to encouragement of how can we discern what we're inputting and allowing certain voices to not influence us in negative ways?
Yeah, this is great. It's so interesting to me, because I think about these things theologically always. Like my brain's always in that place. So there's like TV shows we watch that like aren't like awful, but like they're like the normal TV shows that people watch, right? So you're like having fun, enjoying like a Netflix show or something that's just a normal one that everybody watches. And for me, what I found is if my diet is really devoid of God and of time of learning from him, and I watch those shows and I find myself getting sucked into the like ugliness. Like, there's some dark shows that have been on over the past like 5-10 years that like really like take people to dark places. And I found that there was periods where I couldn't watch those because I just found myself going to the dark places that they led me to. Conversely, if I'm on a regular diet of reading and praying and trying to listen well to God, and I watch those shows, I watch them differently. I intake things from the world in a more critical way where, oh, that's really interesting. That's culture right now. I'm observing culture. I'm understanding what it is. I'm curious about it. And there's a truth there. Like there's a human struggle that they're depicting in this show maybe. And that's really interesting. I can't help but bring in my theological framework or my biblical framework of, oh, wow. If only they knew God, right? And I go, if only they, oh, wow, that's an incredible picture of forgiveness right there. And it's not that I have to over spiritualize everything, but it just brings in this way of seeing the world that's so practical and so normal that the other inputs change from something that you're saying, I'm going to take that in and own that, to I'm going to see that and be critical of it, and not like it's bad. Critical as in like I'm a critical observer of it. I'm watching it. Thinking about it,
but it's not changing you.
Yes,
because you have strength in what your mission and what your values are, and that strength is stronger.
Yeah,
and allows you to enjoy culture and be curious about culture, and also sensitive to know, like, okay, I do not feel great after this like crazy anxious show.
Yes,
you know what? Right now, I might like pause or to be able to see things from different points of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's really, really true. And I think that's helpful then. It's a helpful analogy for then how you interact with other people.
Yeah.
Because when you can see like humans for who they are and who the Bible says they are, you start to see people and their where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So somebody might give you advice, but if you're biblically critical of it, you can see, oh, they're just really wanting to, for example, tell you to do the thing that they did. Because if you do it, then they feel better about their previous decision. Or maybe there's something in it for them and you don't even realize it, that, oh, wow, they're leading me this way, but they're going to benefit from me doing this. So you begin to see their motives. And you can intake it in a more critical way.
So how do you develop that strength? It's
a great question. I think, again, the diet is critical.
Yes.
How much you're intaking from God and how much you're communicating with God and looking to Jesus for leadership really, really matters for if you're going to be able to see things from a biblical worldview. Like we've been talking in the series that we're in right now, creating for yourself a worldview. Like how does God see this? And then it's the pause moment. It's the step aside moment. Okay, I just had this conversation with somebody. How did that make me feel? What are they telling me to do? What might be their motives? You ask these questions from like a 10,000 foot view, and you try to see things with a more biblical lens a little bit. And it's surprising how much we're humans, so we're selfishly motivated.
Yeah. And I think adding on to that is like sometimes I need to remind myself that I can actually ask God.
Yeah.
Like, okay, God, like tell me and show me who you designed me to be and how you designed me to act.
Yeah.
And help me start there.
Yeah.
And that posture for me is helpful too. So that's a great.
There's like a prayer aspect to this, like in the moment to pray. I think for me, there's not much distance between thinking like, hey, what would God want me to do, and prayer. Like those are happening almost in the same moment.
Yeah.
And so I totally agree with you.
But strength in knowing what your values and your mission is, so that you can cut out the voices or the pressures or the opinions of others and live on mission. I think it's crucial to have that conversation with God, so that he can build your identity, and it's built on something from him. And in addition to knowing what your diet is and being still, I think I want to end with this, or maybe I always do this. I have two things, not just one.
Great.
Okay. So first off, I do want to talk about discernment, because I think what humans typically, or we typically like to do, is be like, okay, boundary, isolate everybody out. I know better. I'm going to decide everything. And I don't think that's the answer either.
Yeah.
I don't think God calls us to isolate at all. And so that means that he does put people in our life with voices that are good to listen to. So this isn't like, hey, cut out all noise, all distractions, all voices. Like, how do we discern the voices that are put in our lives to help strengthen us, sharpen us, as our iron sharpens iron, and then also the voices that maybe aren't, and how to, we'll start there with the voices that are there. How do we engage with those voices that are there to strengthen us, and then go on to how to be Jesus-like to the voices that maybe are not helpful to us.
This is really good. So trying to decide which direction to go with this. One of the things I want to say is we have these fundamental things that we do as a staff. And one of the fundamentals we have like 20 some of them, but one of them is mission first, people always. And so when you're thinking through this lens of, hey, mission is always first. Jesus went away and like left people when they were begging him to stay and heal more people. That's mission first. But at the same time, Jesus slowed down so many times to meet people exactly where they were and engage with them, heal them. Like the woman who stops him on the street and touches him and is healed. Like that's something that comes to my mind. I think there's a couple things. The voices that you should listen to and engage with and really own. I think you should be very careful to see what the fruit of their life looks like. So if they're in a place where you look at them in their life and you think, I want that, I think that's good. I think that's healthy. I can see what's healthy there. That's maybe a first sign to start listening to them. But I'd go deeper than that, because sometimes what they show you on the outside isn't actually what's happening on the inside. And so the deeper layer of it that I would go to is, is the mission that they're living for, can you hear in them an authentic desire to have a similar kind of mission with their life? Is what their life is pointing toward, what they value, similar to what you value? And if it isn't, it's good to be open and hear why and listen and always be curious. It's good to be curious. But I think when you're trying to find like really hardcore, like this is advice I'm going to take in and own for myself, I think you really have to be cautious. Does it line up with what the Bible says? Is it something that looks like is actually paying dividends in a healthy way in their life? And does their mission align with what my mission is? Is it something that could relate nicely?
And I think on that note too, like humans change, people change. And so also holding that loosely and knowing like for a season, it might be someone that is really encouraging to you, or somebody that you can be refined with or grow with. But also as seasons shift or priorities shift, like that doesn't mean that relationship ends, but also that can ebb and flow. And so I think all of this is what I'm realizing is it requires a posture of us just continuously being aware and asking God to direct and ensuring that his voice and that mission that he's given us and that value is stronger and strong enough to withstand the changes that do come and the other distractions that do come.
You're exactly right.
But what about the voices that maybe take us away from what we feel like God's calling us to do and living out who we really are? I know that's it can be so nuanced. There's varying degrees of that and varying like healthy choices there. So, do you want to speak to that for a little bit?
There's a couple things. I've heard someone wise tell us, somebody we've been helped by, say that a healthy definition of boundaries is the distance you should keep from someone from which you can love them well. Love them as yourself, right? Yeah. So sometimes people are in your life and the things that they say are damaging. They're harmful. They're not good for you. Sometimes you can't cut those people out of your life, and you shouldn't. You should keep them in your life. So you have to find this level of, we're going to have this boundary here where I'm not taking everything you tell me to do as gospel, as the most important thing, as truth. And so I'm going to look at these things critically. And so I'm also going to keep this little bit of distance here. And then the other piece is you don't have to trust everybody with everything. So sometimes,
that's a good one.
And this is also from the same person, a really helpful bit of advice. You can trust people with particular areas. Yeah. So, for example,
like you would not trust me to change the tires on your car yet. I can learn that.
Yes, but not yet. Yeah,
but you would trust me.
A mechanic. I would trust a mechanic with that.
Yes, good point.
Yes,
but you would trust me with other areas.
Yes,
that's a similar.
Exactly, and then like the areas that I would trust you with is much wider than maybe anybody else on the planet, right? Because I trust you with so much. And I think that that's helpful, but defining those areas with those people that maybe you're not sure how much you should listen to what they say, it's helpful to define, okay, in this area, I can really trust them. Mm-hmm. And they give really good advice, and they've shown some wisdom there. Yeah. This other area, no. And depending on the person, that gets wider or skinnier.
And I think for me, I've been really working on that a lot. It has softened my perspective towards people. I tend towards black and white thinking, and either like I can trust you or I can't trust you. You do me wrong. Like, no,
watch out.
No. But it's helped me. I appreciate it. It's really softened me and humbled me to understand like I can still have a loving view towards someone when I have the perspective of like, hey, I can trust you in this area, and I see you as God has created you, and I see you like I don't just write them off. And
I think there's a value in this, and like we're all humans. We wouldn't want people to trust us with everything. No. Like there's some things I don't want people to put me in the situation where they have to trust me with it, because I'm trying to think of this silly example. I'm not the best cook always, right? So some things I'm not great at cooking, so don't trust me with that. Like that makes me nervous. So it's actually giving them, it's helping that person as well. Mm-hmm. It's putting them in a safe place where they don't think that you're gonna heap too many responsibilities on you.
Or expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to get like there is a little bit of a caveat where there is a time and place for very good, strong boundaries against people that you cannot trust.
Yes.
So I don't want to like blanketly say that this is a perspective to adopt in every situation, but I think goodness, we've
covered the gamut,
traversed this from trust to opinions to diet to your outfit choices. I think that this whole topic though of not being swayed and how you view the incoming information and opinions and your motive too of am I choosing a certain way to act or B, because I want to be liked, or is it because I know God's telling me to do this? All of those things affect how we live out our mission of representing Jesus well. And it's just a really great awareness of keeping all of these things in check and having a daily kind of posture of strengthening that mission that God has given each of us. And so we have covered, like I said, a wide range of things, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. But I think you've given us a ton to think about on this topic.
Likewise.
And so can you leave us with a little bit of encouragement as we want to wrap this segment or this topic up?
Absolutely. First, let me just say, I think we may have to revisit this one because there's so much more to talk about.
Big. I'm so sorry.
No, it's great because I feel like we've talked about it so much and kind of opened up a can of worms. That's good. It's good to open up because I think it helps. I mean, even me just thinking about it, it's helpful.
Yeah.
And so my encouragement hopefully is this. It's that as you engage with people, with ideas, with incoming messages that are prevalent more than ever before, you would find the God-given biblical eyes and ears that allow you to engage but be critical, to take in what's healthy and encouraging, to apply it to your life, but above all, prioritize what God put you here for, and do that with the people that you love and get to enjoy being with.
Yeah. And throw off all those distractions and hindrances as much as you have to, because they're going to come.
Absolutely.
And being aware of them is that first step. We can't put our head in the sand and act like it's not going to happen.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, with that, y'all, we're so excited again that we are back up and running with the Represent Jesus Well podcast. We will be back actually with a guest. Our next episode, all about, should I
let's keep
okay, fine. I don't keep secrets very well, but we will be back with a guest on our next episode. We cannot wait to share more about how we are wrestling with representing Jesus well and what that means to us. And we hope you all have a good week.
See you guys.
See ya.